Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's program around, habits and lifestyle practices that can really help us to live a good, healthy life. I'm so grateful for the Shaw JCC of Akron putting together this wellness programming. My name's Kevin Karras, and I'm the executive director of a local nonprofit called Elevate Akron. And we don't just serve Akron, we've actually served over 13,000 people throughout the region, Summit County and beyond. And really our whole mission is helping to make, healthy living practices for wellness, stress relief, mindfulness, and yoga-based solutions accessible to all. And, we've done that over the years with hosting a big annual gathering downtown. And, since the pandemic's really struck, we've just realized that, more than ever, people have had to deal with stress and loss at unprecedented rates. And even though vaccines are coming out and the world's starting to open back up, we realize that the stress of this takes a toll. It takes a toll on, our mind, on our body, on the different systems of our body. It takes a toll on our relationships. And, we realize it takes a toll on the way we show up at work. So Elevate Akron's just really passionate about creating programming. So just as an opening, if any of you are stressed about having to go back to the workplace or having stress at work, this is really the service that we mainly provide. And, I'd love for you to connect and reach out. But today we're here to actually get a little offering. So let's do a little practice today. After my session, we're going to get to learn about habits around healthy breathing, sleep, relaxation, healthy eating, movement, positive mindset, healthy relationships, finding your meaning in life. And, having inspirational talk is so good, and we have to have it backed with a practice. So yoga and the breathing exercises that it teaches, the mindfulness component, the movement, these are all very practical, applied elements for today's session. So, and you don't have to be, if you don't do yoga, you don't have to be the stereotype or the image of what you think yoga is. We can do yoga sitting, here at our office. If you're up doing something else while listening to this talk, you can, do it standing while you're doing some other activities, as long as you're safe. And so we'll help to make that accessible to you today. So whether you're standing, sitting, just for a moment, close out the browsers, stop what you're doing. This is going to be an activity, so you have to actually focus, and you want it to, because that's where you're going to really get some value out of our time today. So whether you're standing or sitting, let's get our spine nice and upright, get a really good posture. And let's just take a nice deep breath. As we let it go, I think you can get an even deeper breath than that. So let's try it again. Really a deep breath in. As you let go a little bit of the stress. For a final deep breath, filling up your belly, filling up your abdomen, and hold it. And then let's just go ahead and exhale, let it go. And just after taking a few breaths there, do you feel different at all? You might feel that there's, tension in your body, stress that's going on, and, take your time to be present with whatever's there, because, yoga and breathing exercises aren't a magical pill. It takes time, it takes effort, but maybe you feel a little more connected. So I'll just encourage you as we go through our practice today to try and introduce what's known as a 3-part yogic breath. The best way to learn this technique is to have one hand resting on your chest and one hand on your belly. And what you want to do is to see if you can use the muscles in your belly to raise the hand on your belly. Use the muscles to raise the hand on your chest, and then exhale your chest and exhale your belly. So inhale, raise your belly, raise your chest, up to your shoulders, and then exhale down your shoulders, your chest, and your belly. So try that. So you're just using the muscles of your diaphragm, using your intercostal muscles in your ribs, raising your clavicle, and then lowering the chest, lowering the belly. And try that, just filling up from the bottom to the top. And then exhaling down the top to the bottom. As you keep this going, most people might think, oh, breathing, this isn't going to do anything great for me. But too often we just breathe shallow in our chest. We hold our breath. We wonder why we got all this anxiety and stress and digestive disorders. So breathe, use the muscles, access the full potential of your breath, because too often we let the stress of the external world limit our breath. And we just know, the studies are in, that activities that really can deepen our breath can help to stimulate nerves like our vagus nerve that runs from our cranium all the way down through to our digestive system. And we can actually impact the health of our body. We can reduce stress, all through simple activity like breathing. Now, as you keep that going, let's add a little movement into it. Let's release the arms and inhale and raise them up as you breathe in. And let's exhale and lower the arms down. Inhaling them up and exhaling them down. Well, this is nice. You're just like breathing and you're moving. It's like, you have wings. You're spreading your wings here with some movement and breath. Now, if you have any injuries in your shoulders and you can't do it, just do as best as you can. All of our bodies are so unique. We all have our own history and stories and relationship to our bodies. And you just have to work with, how your body is today with your relationship. So, get a few more movements here. Doing it with the breath. Last one. And bring your arms across. Give yourself a big hug, right? Nice big hug, because we don't get enough of these, and we need to start with a healthy relationship with ourselves, right? Like, it's so important to have meaningful connections. And, I think it's got to start with number one, Let's stretch out the shoulder on top. But, we know the impact of positive relationships in our life. If you haven't heard about the Blue Zone study, the study looked at centenarians, the people that live to be over 100, basically people that live the longest lives. And what the study found was that there were regions of the world that were called blue zones. And in these blue zones, basically, people live longer. The question is what caused that? What was the reason for that? Let's switch and stretch out the other shoulder. And what they found was a lot of it had to do with, diet and exercise. But one of the biggest factors was the strength of intimate connections. When stuff goes wrong, when a pandemic hits, do you have connections? And if you don't, it's lonely and a difficult time. And, what the Blue Zone study said is having those strength of connections through those difficult times is what increases longevity. So let's go ahead and release this and shake the arms out. Yes. Let's bring the hands. If you're standing, you can interlace the hands and lift the chest, or grab the forearms and lift the chest, or just bring the hands to whatever your chair is and just get a few breaths to stretch your ribs, to breathe fully there. I like to keep my neck in a neutral position here to be safe, but some people really like to add just a little gentle lift of the chin as well. And nice. And then we'll get a little spinal movement. To see it from the sideways view, it's just like you're rounding your spine, and then you're arching your back. Then you're rounding your spine, and arching your back. Rounding, arching, rounding, arching. Last one. Rounding. And then after you arch, let's come back to a nice upright position into the spine. So I know it's hard to sit upright for a while, but keep it nice and lifted. And let's twist. let's bring one hand to the floor behind you, the chair behind you, one arm to the outside of the leg, and don't just twist, but lift and twist. Getting some movement for your spine. What's the old adage, if you don't use it, you lose it? And the trick with yoga is, like, again, with these poses, you don't have to go as deep as you can. You just go to wherever you can, whatever's comfortable for you, and you breathe there. Too many of us have developed a relationship with our bodies where we feel like we have to have no pain, no gain. And this is just, it's a toxic attitude towards ourselves. We should listen to our bodies. We should respond when there's pain by realizing something's not right. Let's switch it. Let's twist the other way. And whether it's physical sensations, emotions that are coming up, when stress or pain arrives, it means that there's something needs addressed there. So, stress isn't all bad. So we can see it as a way that our body tells us that we need something, right? Baby cries, it needs its diaper changed, it needs food, it needs a nap. We're all just big babies, really. We just gotta listen to our bodies. We're good. Let's come on back to center. And then we come back, we'll plant one hand on the chair or out to the side, and just get a nice big stretch into the side of your body. We're getting all the different planes of movement for the spine right now. Just a nice big stretch. And then we'll do it the other way. Breathe there. And good. And then one more time on each side, just a nice big stretch. Some deep breaths. And then the other way. And good. And then when we go ahead and come on back to center, we'll bring one hand out and we'll just get a little stretch to the wrists. Just gently bringing the fingers back. From all the work on the computers and smartphones, we need to get our wrists stretched here. And then we'll switch it. And so much of our connection has been digital, through Zoom, through online things like this, and it's great. I mean, the ability to access content right now for wellness and well-being is just amazing. But we have that need for connection still. We still have to move. So if you're just watching this, come on, let's get involved. Let's do some stuff here. We've only got a little bit more time together. Let's bring one arm to raise and grab onto the elbow. We'll stretch out the triceps. And then we'll grab the other arm and stretch out the triceps on the other arm. And then we'll let that go and just take a moment to hopefully feel how your arms feel a little more open, spine. Last little movement we'll do is for the neck. So you can just lower the chin and get some nice slow circles out for your neck just to get some good range of motion. And don't go so fast you make yourself dizzy. When you switch the other direction, slow it down a little. And nice last circle. When the chin goes to the chest, just go ahead and raise it back on up to a neutral position. And so often it's this thing that's making ourselves dizzy. Our own mind, our own repetitive thoughts, thinking about the negative situations. You got to find the habits for you that help to organize your mind, that help you to stay balanced. And so, mindfulness has become a very popular thing these days. There's so much research to back up empirically the ways that it just positively affects our mind, our body, our relationships. And, just a very simple mindfulness activity that a lot of people learn is just the simple seated breath awareness. So you can have your eyes open. Ideally, though, you're not just looking around, you're focused on something, or you have your eyes closed. And just for a moment, bring your attention into the feeling of your breath. Now, I know we learned about the deep 3-part breath yoga technique, but without changing your breath, just what do you feel about it? Can you feel your breath? And you're like, yeah, Kevin, I can feel my breath. But can you stay here and focus on that? Not jumping to the emails or dinner or chores. But just focused on your breath. While it might seem like a silly or simple thing to focus on, just with these last moments, see if you can focus entirely on your breath. Nice. And the more you engage in this sort of practice, the easier it becomes. And what it eventually evolves into is, yes, the mind will jump to other things, and maybe those things need your attention and maybe they don't. But the more you give yourself something simple to focus on, like the breath, like the movement we did with the yoga, the more you develop your ability to concentrate. And then the more you can go out and say you want to introduce healthy habits around diet, around sleep, around your well-being. You can actually focus on those things that you want to achieve and bring them into your life. So I'm so grateful that we got to have this time for a little opening practice to this session today. You got a really great presenter here coming up. And, I just wanted, before I close out, to just let you know that I'm available to you. You can look up Elevate Akron. My email address is kevin@elevateakron. Feel free to contact me. We're all about bringing yoga, mindfulness, wellness to our community, to the workplace, to schools, and just let us know if you need the support. We're happy to come out. We're happy to service, and you've got a really great presenter here coming up. So enjoy the rest of the session, and we'll connect soon. So bye.
Okay, I hope you can all hear me. My name is Moshe Torem. I'm a graduate of the Hebrew University School of Medicine in Jerusalem, Israel. There I worked as a general practitioner, and here I trained in psychiatry and later in mind-body integrative medicine. At the present time, I continue to teach young doctors, we call them residents, at the Cleveland Clinic Akron General Medical Center at the Family Medicine program. I also teach medical students. I also teach in national and international conferences. And I just want to go on and present to you the outline. First, a brief disclosure is that this is an educational program. It's not designed to give any medical advice. Medical advice you should get from your own physician. And starting with a couple of words of wisdom. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. Moving on to an outline, we have 7 items we're going to talk about today: breathing, regularity and healthy sleep, food, eating and hydration, motion and physical exercise, mental gymnastics, connections, family, friends, and spirituality, having a purpose and meaning in one's life. All these are issues we're going to cover today, and they are going to promote good health, and that's going to last us for many years into the future. Okay, starting with breathing, Kevin did an excellent exercise, and I don't have to add a lot, just saying one thing here, or maybe 2. One is that learn to use your diaphragm in breathing. It's called sometimes abdominal breathing. Chest breathing, where we use intercostal muscles, is less effective and more tiring. And another thing has to do with the value of home air purifiers and humidifiers, especially in the winter. Humidifiers are important. And of course, air purifiers are important at taking out with special filters, HEPA filters, all the dust that's in the air. Moving on to the next slide, which deals with regularity and timing. So first, it's important to note that regularity and its importance. Our physiology loves consistency and regularity. So the opposite of regularity is chaos. Chaos is a prescription which is contributing to a poisonous effect on the physiology of our body. So regularity of daily routine activities promote optimal function and good health. Examples: same time for nightly bedtime and morning wake time. Weekend should not change that. Should be exactly the same. Same thing as with vacations. Same time for bedtime, same time for waking up in the morning into daytime activities. Same time for daily meals, same time for daily physical activity. Practice regularity with daily downtime. Everybody needs some downtime. Sometimes it's half an hour, sometimes it's an hour. Whatever we do there, whether we daydream or we just listen to our favorite music, we can call it downtime. Practice regularity in quality time with family and friends. Practice regularity with daily mental gymnastics, and we'll talk more about that a little later. And practice regularity with daily fun time. Each of us ought to have some time every day, which is fun time. It can be half an hour, it can be an hour, it can be 50 minutes, but some fun time every day is good for us. Okay, value of healthy sleep. Sleep and its benefits for good health. So first we need to know is that healthy nightly restorative sleep is good for the immune system. It supports and strengthens the immune system. And we all know how important a healthy, robust immune system is to protect us from infections, including, of course, the COVID infection during this pandemic. Many times you have heard that many people get infected with the COVID virus, but they have no symptoms. It's basically called the asymptomatic infection, which means that they're not even sick, but they had the infection of the COVID virus. So one of the elements that we know is very important in that is having a strong and healthy immune system that protects us from getting sick. Healthy nightly restorative sleep is good for our brain function. And it also protects us and reduces the risk for developing dementia, including Alzheimer's dementia. Healthy nightly restorative sleep is also good for having a good memory. And practice good sleep hygiene and sleep promoting habits, such as avoid exposure to electronic blue lights coming from cell phones and iPads and so on, or the television. Avoid watching violent, upsetting movies before bedtime nightly sleep. Darkness and cool temperatures between 67 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Some people are a little higher with that, some a little lower with that. Find out what is the range that is best for you and practice that regularly. Sleep deprivation causes daytime fatigue and weakness. So if you find yourself yawning, even in the morning or early afternoon hours, maybe you're not getting a healthy nightly restorative sleep. Sleep deprivation is a source of accidents, including automobile accidents, and also contributes to poor judgment. And daily short naps in the afternoon are okay if needed, but no more than an hour, 45 minutes, half an hour to 45 minutes are fine. Overdoing it prevents us from having restorative nightly sleep. Moving on to the issue of eating, food, eating, and hydration. So we have to remember that there are real foods and there are pseudo foods. What's the difference? So real foods are foods that have not been adulterated. Pseudo foods are basically foods that have been produced synthetically by the food industry. So examples of real food would be like a whole potato. Baked potato is real food. Potato chips are, quote, pseudo foods. And we have many other examples of that. Timing, when to eat and when not to eat. So you may have heard that eat breakfast as a king or queen, eat lunch as a prince or princess, and eat dinner as a pauper, which means dinner ought to be the smallest meal of the day. And the largest meal of the day ought to be either breakfast or lunch. The makeup of food, generally we know there are carbohydrates, which are generally sugars, fats, proteins, and vitamins and micronutrients. So carbohydrates are a good and quick source of energy. So we're going to do a quick review of that. So here is a list of quality carbohydrates, or they're generally called carbs. So these are sugars. Most of them are called complex carbohydrates. And you can look at the list and see it, and you can read it later on your own because you'll be able to view these slides on your own later. So I'm going to move on to the next one, which deals with fats. So we store energy in the form of fat, either under our skin or inside the abdomen. Fat is the richest source of energy. Our brain is made up of 60% fat. Food sources of fat are animal fats and fats from plants. Plants would be an example, olives, oil like olive oil, canola oil, corn oil, sunflower, etc. Types of fats, saturated and unsaturated fats. So generally, unsaturated fats are healthier for us than the saturated fats. Most saturated fats come from animal sources. And the unsaturated fats, most of them come from plants, but there are some unsaturated fats like omega-3s coming from fish. Trans fats, these are hydrogenated liquid oils to create solid spread like a margarine. So if you take liquid oils and you hydrogenate them, they become basically a solid, like Crisco from the 1950s or 60s, you may remember that name, is an example of that. Generally, trans fats are not healthy for us. They increase the LDL cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol that contributes to heart disease and high blood pressure and so on. So omega-3 fats are unsaturated fats, and they contribute to our good health. So brain health mostly comes from DHA, and heart health mostly from EPA, and eye health comes from both DHA and EPA. These are all the omega-3 fats. Okay, so omega-3 fats coming from plants. I'll give you a quote here that says, limited but supportive evidence suggests that higher intake of omega-3 fatty acids from plant sources like flaxseed, walnuts, may reduce mortality among persons with existing CVD, which stands for coronary vascular disease. Okay, here is an image that shows sources of omega-3 fats, which are essential fatty acids. And you can look at the list here. I'm not going to read it to you. It's self-explanatory. After I complete my verbal presentation, you'll be able to look at these slides again on your own. Okay, the third element in food are proteins. These are building blocks of cells and tissues. Animal-based sources of proteins are eggs, fish, meats. Plant-based sources are beans, buckwheat, rice, quinoa. Quinoa is the best source of protein because it provides all the 8 essential amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. So it's the only plant-based source that gives us all the 8 essential amino acids. That's quinoa. The reason I mention it is because people who don't want to eat any animal sources of protein can just eat quinoa, and that in itself is going to give you all the 8 essential amino acids and all the building blocks of the necessary proteins. Okay, they are just basically slow to be digested, so the best time to eat them are either in the morning or at lunchtime. Eating a lot of proteins in the evening is not healthy for us because it loads up the stomach with food that it takes much longer to digest. So basically, we go to sleep with a full stomach, and that is not contributing to healthy sleep. There are basically 2 types of amino acids. They're called essential and non-essential amino acids. So, for example, a non-essential amino acid can be produced by the liver from another amino acid. An essential amino acid must be provided by food from the outside. Amino acids, as I mentioned, are the sources of proteins and like neurotransmitters, enzymes, the source of DNA, and the liver can produce sugar from fat. Sugar and fat from proteins. So if we eat proteins, we can actually not eat any sugar at all because the liver can make sugar from proteins. All right, what about water, right? It's important to remember that more than 70% of our body is made up of water. Water is the heaviest element in our body. So if we go in what's called a weight loss program and you sign up for drinking some stuff that they give you there, liquids, and if you lose 3, 4, or 5 pounds in the first week, most of it is water, because these liquids contain in them what's called diuretics, and we basically get rid of water from our body, and that's how it looks on the scale, like we have lost weight. We have lost weight, but not the weight we want to lose. In other words, we don't want to get dehydrated by losing a lot of water through diuretics in these liquids that are given to us in these special programs. So basically, there is clean and unclean water. I don't have to go into more details about that. You understand the idea how important it is to drink clean water, which is water with a reverse osmosis. You can get them today in different stores. Even the supermarkets provide us with a good source of these. Best sources of water, of course, are the clean waters by reverse osmosis. Hydration and dehydration. Very important to be hydrated on a regular basis. One of the ways to know we're well hydrated is looking at the color of our urine. When we urinate, we look at the urine, it ought to be the same color of water. If we are dehydrated, the urine becomes more yellow and even dark brown. And that's a sign that we may be dehydrated. So this is one of the signs of dehydration. Of course, another sign is we feel very thirsty or we feel dry in the mouth. We have to lick our lips a lot. We touch our tongue. The tongue is dry. And it's a sign of dehydration. Vitamins and micronutrients. So what are vitamins? Vitamins are micronutrients that are necessary for the proper functioning of all living organisms, including our own body. We get our vitamins from food, and the lack of vitamins may cause diseases. So here are some examples. Lack of vitamin B12 will cause anemia. Lack of vitamin C will cause a disease called scurvy. And lack of vitamin D is the cause of a disease called rickets. And if it happens in young children, their bones are not developing well because they don't have enough calcium in the bones, and the bones become bowed. And you can see images of kids with rickets because of the lack of calcification of the bones, and their legs may look like bowed down instead of straight because of the lack of calcium. Other micronutrients examples are minerals, calcium, iron, magnesium, potassium, selenium, zinc, and even more. Even copper is considered a micronutrient. Phytochemicals, flavonoids, lutein, lycopene, carotene, and more are all examples of micronutrients. that are very important for proper and healthy functioning of our system. Standard American diet, short, sad. You look at the images, I don't have to elaborate, it's self-explanatory. So what's the standard American diet? High in animal fats, high in unhealthy fats like saturated hydrogenated fats, low in fiber, high in processed foods, low in complex carbohydrates, and low in plant-based foods. Principles of healthy eating. So regularity and timing, I mentioned that earlier. Eating real food and minimizing and avoiding processed foods. Avoiding trans fats and high fructose corn syrup. Being mindful and mindless regarding eating habits, and we'll talk about it in the next slide. And here is a quote from a book by Michael Pollan, In Defense of Food. And the quote goes like this, quote, "Eat real food, mostly plants, and not too much," unquote. I like that quote a lot from that book. Okay, so healthy eating plate, again, self-explanatory. I don't have to go into details here. You can look at this slide again in your own time. And you can see the source of it, which is from Harvard Medical School. All right, great sources, 13 sources of probiotics. Probiotics, as you know, are very important. They provide our colon and the microbiome in it with healthy bacteria, healthy microorganisms. These are very important, especially when you get a prescription for an antibiotic. Ask the doctor or the other healthcare professional that's giving it to you to give you also a prescription for a probiotic. Some of the probiotics you can get from food, but you can actually get a prescription for a probiotic. That's going to protect you, because if the antibiotic is going to kill off the healthy bacteria in the colon, we may develop a bunch of other diseases that we don't want to have, like a disease called an infection of C. diff. You may have heard of it, Clostridium difficile. And it's important to prevent that from happening, because if the antibiotic is broad spectrum, it can kill off the healthy bacteria, and C. diff is going to develop in the colon and cause colitis and gastrointestinal infections. So one of the ways to prevent it is getting a probiotic either through food or through a prescription from the healthcare professional that gave you the prescription for the antibiotic. Okay, here is another self-explanatory slide. As you can see it, foods that burn fat, here is the list, and foods that boost our metabolism in general. So I'm not going to read it to you, self-explanatory. Okay, foods to reduce or avoid in general. So you can look at that. Okay, here's the whole list. Again, I'm not going to read it to you. You can look at this list again. Some of you want to communicate with me by email later. My email appears on the first slide. You can see it, and I'll be happy to respond to you. So I mentioned before about the idea of mindless versus mindful eating. So here is a list. Obviously, mindless eating is not healthy for us. It contributes to weight gain and unhealthy obesity. Mindful eating is a lot healthier for us. So here's an example of mindless eating. Watching TV with junk food. So one hand holds the remote control in flipping channels. In the other hand, grabs potato chips, popcorn, or other stuff from a bucket that's by us. I'm sure you've seen many people walking into the movie theater with a bucket of popcorn or other stuff. And obviously, while they're watching TV, they're also eating the popcorn, or even at home, you do that too. That's an example of mindless eating. Happy hour with alcohol and junk food in a bar is another example of mindless eating. Fun at a live stadium ball game, such as baseball, football, basketball, and so on, with junk food. Celebrating personal milestones with alcohol and junk food, and common overeating of snacks. So what is mindful eating? Choosing food for a meal, a formal meal. Setting the table with utensils and napkins. Setting a table to eat, not walking around multitasking and eating at the same time. Chewing slowly and enjoying the food's scent and, of course, aroma taste while it's in our mouth. So we chew slowly to eventually get the food down to be ready to be swallowed. Focusing on the act of eating. And when a sense of fullness is achieved, eating ends and leftovers are stored for the next meal in the refrigerator. Okay, oral hygiene, very important for good health and maintaining good health. It's an excellent habit. So brushing the teeth at least twice a day. Some people brush the teeth after each meal, which is definitely promoted. Flossing at least twice a day. I have now developed the habit of flossing after each meal, and I love it. My teeth love it too, and my gums also love it. Regular visits with the dental hygienist to clean your teeth and for healthy gums, and prevent, of course, the accumulation of tartar on the teeth. Regular visits with a dentist, and if you want to chew gum, it's okay, but only gum with xylitol. You can see it there. Xylitol is a type of sugar, and it's the only one which is an antibacterial sugar, which means that in our mouth, bacteria and microbes cannot grow on xylitol. It's actually an antimicrobial sugar. So it is now promoted as a gum to chew with xylitol. And you can get it in stores today, and you find it there. So, motion and physical exercise. Sedentary activity is now considered the new smoking, quote unquote. In other words, it contributes to disease just like smoking does. Sedentary lifestyle causes a deconditioning syndrome associated with weakness, dizziness, muscle pain, joint pain, and so on. Walking is good for muscles, for joints, for the heart, for vessels, and for the brain. Engage in daily walking activities, very important and very good for us. And if you can't walk, exercise with the upper body. Mental gymnastics. I mentioned that earlier, so I want to talk now about the mental gymnastic idea. So mental gymnastics has to do with the exercises that promote healthy functioning of our brain and mind. Good example would be crossword puzzles, word games, Sudoku. Sudoku, many of you know what it is and how to play it. Card games like bridge, rummy with other people. Learning and speaking a second language. Learning to play a musical instrument, even if you have never played one. All these contribute to keeping the brain in good functioning state and even promoting it and making it better. Another example of that would be doing something with your body in such a way that would be a new activity you've never done before. So here's an example. I'll share something with you. I'm left-handed. Okay, what does it mean is I write with my left hand. I used to do everything with my left hand, even brushing my teeth. So some time ago, quite a few years ago, I decided I'm going to force myself to do something with my right hand, even though I always prefer to do it with my left hand. So what are those things? The first thing I started to do with my right hand is to brush my teeth with my right hand. So sometimes I brush with the left, sometimes with the right, just to give my brain something new and different to do. Another example would be shaving. I use an electric shaver, and I always use my left hand with my electric shaver. So some years ago, I decided, no, I'm going to try and use my right hand with my electric shaver. And I actually am able to do it. So sometimes I switch to the left, sometimes I switch to the right. Simply to do some new things with my right hand, because doing that, I'm activating my left hemisphere. As you know, my left hand is operated by my right hemisphere. So these are just examples that you can start practicing, in addition, of course, to learning to play a musical instrument. All right, family and friends, staying in touch with close family members is very important in avoiding loneliness and feeling part of a support group, a good group, and a close one. Staying in touch with friends adds to a sense of belonging and being part of a community. These add to a sense of support, knowing these people will be there for you and with you when needed. All these factors strengthen our immune system. Okay, anyone recognizes the man in these pictures? Some of you may, but here's the answer. Dr. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust concentration camps. Why is it important to mention it? Because he talked about the importance of having meaning and purpose in our lives. So those people who have a sense that their life has meaning and that there is a purpose for their living usually have a better quality of life. They also have a stronger immune system and they live longer. So having a personal sense of meaning and purpose in our life helps to promote resilience to illness and better recovery from surgery and trauma. Healthy life has a quest for meaning. A quote from Dr. Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Life is not primarily a quest for pleasure, as Freud believed, or a quest for power, as Alfred Adler believed or thought. Life is a quest for meaning, said Dr. Frankl. And he actually, here's his book. Okay. So, to summarize, actions to reduce illness risk. As you see here, the list, I'm not going to read it to you. It's self-explanatory. It's available to you to look at. What I'd like to do now is open it up for, first of all, thank you for coming and being part of it, and open it up for discussion or questions that you may have that I'll be happy to answer right now. Okay, Shannon, I see your face. You are there. And Shannon is going to collect the questions from the chat room that have come up. So you can go ahead and type in questions, and Shannon, you can look at them and actually speak out, verbalize the question. I'll be happy to answer it.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for presenting. That was a great presentation. I think we all got a lot out of it. And I actually have some questions from when people signed up and they have already asked. So I'll go ahead with those. But like he said, if you have any questions, feel free to go in the chat and we'll answer as many as we can. And then like he said, if anyone has other questions that weren't answered, his email will be at the first slide, which will get sent out to all the participants after. Okay, so the first question here is, what is the best food or foods to eat in the morning?
Okay, that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked. Okay, there are several sources, of course, of good food in the morning. All right, so you may start your meal with food that is relatively easy to digest, and also goes in easy from the stomach into the small intestines. So you may start with fruit, such as, let's say, blueberries. Okay, berries in general, excellent source to start. It's a good source of sugar, but a good source of course, fiber. And you can also use other fruits such as an orange, an apple. So there are other fruits that you can use, a small amount of that. Then you can go with an excellent source of carbs that is going to last you for a long time, because these carbs are trapped in fiber. So a good example of that would be oatmeal. So oatmeal, but don't add regular sugar to it, because that's going to spoil the whole thing. So what can you add to oatmeal? You can add a fruit. You can add blueberries. You can add some dry figs, a little bit of, let's say, a date. These are all natural and real foods. And the reason they're real foods is there are no synthetics in them. They're not pseudo foods. In addition to that, if you want to add a protein, you can add that too. You can add an egg or eggs, but that would come later. So you start out with those that are easy to digest and go through, and you go later with the protein. You don't start with a protein because protein takes longer to digest. So if you put protein in the stomach, it takes much longer to move it to the small intestine. So your stomach is going to be, if you start with protein first, your stomach is going to be filled up later with either the oatmeal, a source of course, carbs, sugar, and later on the food. So that'll take it longer to move on to the small intestine. So again, I repeat, start with some food, move on to oatmeal, and then add the protein later. The protein would be, as an example, of eggs. You can add even meat if you want to, sardines, and so on. So that's the general idea. There's much more to say about that, but I'll stop here.
Very good. Awesome. Okay. The next question, could you recommend a solution for someone who always feels the need to eat unhealthy foods?
Oh my God.
So all of us, really.
Well, yes. Where do I start with that? Gee. Some people say that it's almost a form of an addiction. Remember that the food companies that produce this are huge corporations. And their basic idea is to get us addicted to these foods. They produce foods that these are not foods, they are pseudo foods. And they are on the shelf, and they want them to stay on the shelf for a very long time. So they want a product that has a long shelf life. And they create a long shelf life by putting chemicals in that product that prevent other creatures to eat that food. So you got to think of it as almost, have you heard the story of what's called the canary and the coal mine? Most of you have heard of it. So what's the story of the canary and the coal mine? You know, in the old days, coal miners had to go deep into the coal mine and start digging the coal out. But they didn't know if it's safe to get in there because of poisonous gases that could accumulate there. And if they got in there, they could die by breathing in those gases. So what did they do? They took a canary, a small bird, that put it in a cage and lowered it down into the coal mine. Left it there for about 20, 30 minutes, and then brought it up. If the canary was alive, it was safe to go down there. If they brought up the canary, it was dead, it wasn't safe because the canary died from breathing in the poisonous gases. Okay, that's the metaphor. Now, how does it apply to us? Here's an example. Let's take the example of bread. Okay, buy yourself a bread, a loaf of bread or half a bread, and buy another type of bread which has the least amount of chemicals in it. And you put the bread, let's say, in room temperature in a cupboard at home in your kitchen. The good bread is the one that grows mold on it in about 3 to 4 days. Why is that a good bread? Because the mold is another creature that wants to eat the bread. Okay, the large food corporations, the companies that make the bread that is going to last longer with a longer shelf life, put chemicals in there that poison the mold. In other words, the mold tries to eat that bread and it dies off, which means the bread doesn't spoil, quote unquote. What we call bread that's spoiled is actually a biological phenomenon whereby the mold, which is green many times on the bread, grows on the bread because it doesn't die. It is safe to eat that bread. So if we see bread that's being molded within 3 days in room temperature, that is the safest bread to eat. On the other hand, if you buy bread and you keep it in room temperature for a week, in 2 weeks, and it doesn't mold, that is poisonous bread. Okay, I hope you got the idea. Thank you.
Interesting. Yes. Okay, the next question, you kind of covered this a lot in your presentation, but what is the importance of having a daily schedule?
Yes. What's the importance of it is this. Our physiology loves, I'm going to use the word, The opposite of chaos in life is called what? Cosmos. Okay. Cosmos means order. Okay. Look, we live in a world where there is order. The sun shines every morning and sets in the evening. We have a cycle of daytime where the sun is up and we have light, and we have night where there is darkness, and that happens every day. We have 4 seasons every year, okay? And you know how the plants respond to that. Spring comes and the plants come to life. How did they know that? They have a physiology built into their DNA. So it goes for the trees, okay, that responds to the seasonal changes. So we have rhythms in our body, and there are rhythms that are called circadian rhythms, which means there are 24-hour rhythms. They respond to the regularity of our daily living. In other words, our liver, our heart, our vessels, our brain, they all love regularity. Sleep at night, it's called nightly sleep. The same time to go to bed and start sleeping, the same time to wake up in the morning. Our brain loves it. The rest of our physiology loves it. If we do the opposite of that, which is chaos, our systems do not function well in chaos. They are confused. They don't know when to get started, and they don't know when to rest, because the opposite of it, as I mentioned, is chaos. So a chaotic lifestyle contributes to what? A weakened immune system, greater risk for diseases and illnesses, and a harder time in recovering from surgery and recovering from illnesses in general. I said enough. I can say much more, but I'll stop here in answering that question.
Perfect. I'll probably do 1 or 2 more, but if anyone wants to put any in the chat, feel welcome, do right now. Okay, so let's see. What if my personality type tends to clash with having a stable daily routine?
Wow, that's a very good question. Wow, how do I answer that question? I think I would go with a quote from Shakespeare. Okay, one of the quotes, I love quotes from Shakespeare, but one of them I love the most is from Hamlet. And that goes like this, quote, "To thy own self be true," unquote. So what does that mean? In order to be true to yourself, you have to know yourself. You have to understand yourself. And then I'm going to jump to a quote from Rabbi Hillel, who said, quote, "If I am not for myself, then who shall be for me? And if I'm only for myself, then what am I? And if not now, when?" Unquote. So, 3 interesting questions, okay, with a lot of food for thought. So get to know yourself. If you say you have a personality that does not like cosmos in your life and regularity, get to know yourself deeper. What does that mean? Where does it come from? What are you getting from a chaotic, unorganized, structured life? So remember, having a structured, organized life does not mean that you're not supposed to have fun in your life, okay? You remember the list I made, I had before. Part of having, it's okay to have fun in your life, all right? And even on a daily basis. It is okay to have downtime in your life. It is okay to do that. However, structure it, schedule it, rather than living it in a chaotic way, which means unorganized, like, quote, whatever, unquote. I'm sure you've heard that expression from some people, whatever. So living the whatever life is not healthy for our system, for our physiology, and even, I will say, for our spirituality and our brain and our mind. I'll stop here, but we can do a future session just on that issue and that question about personality types. How do you know what kind of personality you have? What do you do about it? How do you interact with the environment? How do you interact with other people? Shannon, maybe in the future we can do a whole session just about personalities. And how do you know what kind of personality do you have? And what do you do about it?
I would love that. That was a great answer to that question.
Thank you.
Here's a really good one to kind of end things up. if you had to prioritize 3 things to help me change my lifestyle, what would they be?
Oh my gosh, 3 things. Okay.
3 things.
All right. Number 1 is get at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. This is crucially important. You may remember that I mentioned one of the lines in there was it reduces the risk of developing dementia and Alzheimer's dementia. Guess what I saw today in the news this morning? It was in several news channels between 7 and 8 in the morning. Exactly on that. How important nightly sleep is, restorative sleep every night, in reducing the risk for Alzheimer's dementia later on in life. Okay, strengthening the immune system, of course, protecting yourself from diseases, infections, and so on. So getting a good night's sleep, crucially important. Item 2, okay. What's the next item? The next item is avoid poisonous stuff. So what's poisonous stuff? Number 1, smoking. Avoid smoking. It's poison. I don't have to say more to you, okay? Avoid other poisons like excessive use of alcohol, poison, street drugs, poison, okay. So the third thing, what else? Learn to eat real foods, not pseudo foods, okay? And so these are the 3 things basically, and I would add in that exercise, physical exercise daily. Just walking is a good habit to have every day. Start with walking, 10 minutes a day, go up to 20, then slowly to 30 minutes a day. And you will find out that this is just doing wonders for your brain, your mind, your mood, and of course, your physical health.
Perfect. Well, that's all the questions we have here. Thank you again, Dr. Torem, so much for joining us tonight. I know we all got a lot out of it. I've been getting chats saying how much they've learned and what a fun experience this has been. So that's great to hear. For everybody who watched, and if you know anybody who didn't get to join, we will be sending out this recording afterwards, along with Dr. Torem's slides, so that you can really go through them and read them thoroughly. So that's it for tonight. Anything else you'd like to add, Dr. Torem?
Yes, you have my email on the first slide. You
Yes.
can find it there. It's mtorem@neomed.edu. So you can email me, and if I can be helpful in answering some more questions, I'll be happy to do it. And in the future, if you have any subjects that you're interested in that I can help with in the future in an educational program, I'll be happy to work with you, Shannon, on it. One of the items is personality types. How do you know which personality you have? What do you do about it? And how do you work with or interact with other people who have specific personalities? So maybe Shannon, you and I can communicate in the future about how to set that up if there is an
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you, Shannon. And thank you all for coming to this webinar.
Yes. Thank you.
Stay safe and healthy.